Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christina Jackson, and I am the Executive Director of Washington Council of Lawyers. I am thrilled to welcome you to Pathways to the District of Columbia bench. We are very excited to dive deep into this conversation. I know many of you are interested in joining the bench. We have a number of requests for endorsements from Washington Council of Lawyers, and so we're always interested in the tips and tricks to help folks who are interested in doing this very important work. Couple of housekeeping things. First, if you haven't already, if you'll share your name and organization in the chat so our panelists know who is in the audience, that would be fantastic. We want this to answer all of your questions. So if something comes up and you have a clarifying question or want to know more information, or it sparks a question for you that is related, please feel free to add it in the chat, raise your hand, or come off mute and ask your question. If you don't want to ask it yourself, please put it in the chat and I will make sure that I ask it as we're going along. We want to make sure that we're answering all of your questions, so feel free to jump in if something strikes you. We will be sending a follow-up email with more information, including the contact information. I will also put in the chat the website address for the JNC. Their information is all out there for you, 100% transparent. No one is trying to hide anything. We want good folks on the bench, and we can't do that if we don't provide the information and if we don't make sure that folks are turning in competitive applications. I am thrilled today to be joined by our chair, our vice chair, and the executive director of the Judicial Nominations Commission. Tracy Nutall is the executive director. Marie Johns is the chair, and Ben Wilson is the vice chair. And with that, I will turn it over to Tracy to get us started.
Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. We are happy to join you today and be able to share what we hope to be information that will inform you on the JNC and its process. And I am excited to have Marie and Ben, who are outstanding mentors to me and mentors to some of you, I would suspect. And so I appreciate appreciate them joining me today. And so without spending a whole lot of time, I would want to encourage you to go to our website and look at our look at their resumes and look at the rich history in the legal community and the business community. And so let's jump right in on our first question. Unless Maria, Ben, you wanted to open up with something.
Well, I'd just like to say a few things about the commission, unless that was going to be your
yes.
question. Okay. Well, then what I'll say instead, and I'll wait for the question, Tracy, is to let everyone know that our executive director, Tracy Nutall, is amazing. She makes bricks without straw every day. She and Cecilia Harper handle an immense amount of information, keep the commissioners organized and focused, and we thank her for all that she does every single day. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Ben, you were waiting for me, right? You're just ready to jump in.
No, I wasn't, but I would say amen. We are thrilled that to be with you today. Please be sure we answer your questions. And there may be questions that Marie and I can't answer, but Ms. Nutall knows all. And so do take advantage of the opportunity to speak with her in the event you need additional information or something that we say is not very clear. But thank you in advance for your interest, and we look forward to your question.
Okay, so Marie, let's get started. Would you please give us a basic overview of the Judicial Nomination Commission and its process for identifying candidates to recommend to the White House?
Thank you, Tracy. And thank you to the Washington Council of Lawyers for this time. And because certainly within your membership are individuals who very much would want to interest in engaging in this process. The Judicial Nomination Commission of the District of Columbia actually was a creature of what is known as the Home Rule Act. So we've been around since 1973. And the basic charge to the commission is to screen, select, and recommend to the President of the United States candidates for appointment to the Superior Court of the District of Columbia, the DC Court of Appeals Court, as well as the commission has the responsibility for the appointment of chief judges for both Superior Court and Court of Appeals. We are a body of 7 members. My esteemed vice chair is you are meeting today, Ben Wilson. Ben is a mayoral appointee, as well as the Honorable Linda Kropp, our well-known and highly regarded former chair of the DC Council. Commissioner Kropp also was appointed by the mayor. We have one commissioner colleague who is appointed by the President of the United States, and that's Addie Schmidt with Harris, St. Laurent, and Weschler. We have 2 colleagues who are appointed by the DC Bar. One is your colleague as well, Yaida Ford of Ford Law Pros, and Vincent Cohen of Desher. Both are DC Bar appointees. The chief judge of the U.S. District Court for the district appoints a member, and that's the Honorable Tanya Chetkin. And I believe I am bringing up the rear, and my appointment was through the DC Council. So we have, again, 7 members on the commission coming from those appointing authorities, and also by statute, 2 of the commissioners, Ms. Kropp and myself, are non-lawyers in order to bring a broader perspective to the decision-making process. I'll close by saying that in our process, we interview applicants for the post, and at the end of the application process, there's an interview process. Most of the commissioners take the time to interview applicants on a one-on-one basis, and then we have a formal commission meeting where all applicants are interviewed by the full commission. And then the JNC recommends 3 people per vacancy to the president, who has 60 days then to nominate a person from the list sent by the JNC. The nominees are then referred to the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee for confirmation. So selected by the president, recommended by the JNC, selected by the President of the United States, and then confirmed by the Senate. So in a nutshell, that is the process.
Thank you, Marie. So let's jump into the meat of the conversation, and we have a group of public interest lawyers. Can you share with them what they should be thinking about now, or how they should be preparing themselves now if they have an interest in applying to become a judge on in the Superior Court or at some point on the Court of Appeals? What can they do now to better position themselves for JNC recommendation?
Ben, will you start? I'll add if there's anything to add, which I doubt.
Sure, I'd be
Your
pleased to
answer was complete.
start. Thank you, Marie. And so if I could start with some of the obvious things that I'm sure would occur to each of you, review the application and go to our website. There's a lot of valuable information there, www.jnc.dc.gov. And think hard about the experience that you might need, but you may not have. And so, for example, have you appeared in Superior Court? It's not an absolute requirement, but if you're familiar with the processes, that's a good thing. Were you a clerk? If so, that gives you some sense of what the responsibilities are of a judge of any of our courts. Depending on where you are in your career, you may still want to pursue a clerkship opportunity, so you will have that experience. So these are some of the things that you'd want to think about. You might also consider visiting the courthouse, sitting in on a trial, sitting in on a hearing. Just the process of being admitted to the court every day. Those of you that have been there and understand you don't just walk through the doors, but it's important to get that sense. And then think about how you demonstrate your commitment to the community. And how have you done that already, either not only in the work that you do 9 to 5, but your community activities outside of work. And then ultimately, it makes a lot of sense to speak with judges of our court right now that you may know, that you may have appeared before, who can offer a great deal of insight about what they didn't know when they became judges, how they developed those skills, the training programs that the court offers, how they balance work-life challenges. And some of you have other responsibilities in addition to your work with families, with children, with parents. And so balancing those challenges, which you're no doubt balancing now, thank you very much, I think is very important.
Marie, did you want to add anything?
I Ben covered it very well. I just would underscore one of the points that he made, and that is with community service. I think many of us on the commission are very much looking to hear what applicants' interests and involvement, areas of interest and involvement have been outside of the law, quite frankly, to help them understand our city, to understand the people. We are relatively small as a patch of geography, but very diverse, very complex, actually. And applicants who bring an understanding of those aspects of the district, along with their legal background and experience, that's always very good to hear.
Thank you. Thank you. So what are some of, in your introduction, Marie, you spoke to a little bit of the process, which is we open a vacancy for any number of reasons. Someone may retire, someone may decide to pursue an opportunity at a higher court, U.S. District Court. Someone may decide they don't want to re-up for a new term. So we open the vacancy, and then we have an application process. Candidates, they may, and then we have an investigation process. So let's talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls we or you all might see during the application process that we would want potential or prospective applicants to avoid.
Well, it's always important to keep the house in order. The financial house, we all know that that's a cardinal rule of life, and it's a very important aspect to the application process as well. Because as we described earlier, these names are going to the President of the United States, and once names go over to the White House, that actually launches yet another round of investigative activity. So if you're thinking about applying, make sure that you have clean financials, that you're current on your taxes, anything that may create any cause for concern, particularly from your financial records. Just scrub those, make sure that they're in order, and that is an important first step in considering an application.
So does clean mean perfect?
No, because I think I certainly don't have perfect perfect house, so to speak. And I've been through an FBI clearance, so I know the rigors of it. So it's not necessarily that there's not something that it's perfection, but rather an explanation that if there's an issue that occurs on in your financial matters, that there is an explanation that can provide a reasonable story as to why something may have existed on your record. So no, not perfection, but a good answer for anything that may trigger a question.
Ben, did you want to add to that?
Just a couple things. I think that, listen, disclose negative information. Negative information is not necessarily a disqualifier. So when you were in college, you received a speeding ticket, put that in context. If you have a tax issue, fix it, pay the taxes that you owe. If you've been involved in litigation, excuse me, please be prepared to put that litigation in the proper perspective for us. Other obvious things, review your application for typos and clarity. It is ultimately going to the White House. And we do perform a credit check. Excuse me, respond fully to the questions that are asked. And obviously you don't want to wait until the last minute, because inevitably there's something that arises that you might not have anticipated that you can address. So these are some of the things, but put your best foot forward, as they say. And very, very important. A couple other things I would say is sometimes we get letters on behalf of applicants and phone calls. And so as you're practicing, think about some of your opposing counsel. What would they say about you? What would judges of the court that you've appeared before say about you? And who would vouch for you? We don't need 1,000 letters, but a few letters that from people who know your work and can talk about your work and your character is important. And I would reiterate again, if you have a question about the process and you're uncertain, Ms. Nutall, she can help you understand what the expectation is.
If I may, Tracy, I just want to underscore one of Ben's points, and that is it's important to put best foot forward and to provide a complete application, but it's a quality effort, not quantity. And so focus on providing that information that best describes your experience, your background, your motivation. As Ben said, people who know your work and are willing to write a letter, those are welcome. And by the way, if Ben gets a letter, that letter is shared with all commissioners. If I get an email, that is shared with all commissioners. So all information that comes in on an applicant's behalf is shared with all members of the commission. But it really is, please focus on quality as opposed to reams of paper, because that is a much better representation and much more positively received, quite frankly.
Thank you. And if I may just jump in and step out of my role as moderator and step into the role as the executive director who sort of receives and reviews the information in the first instance, I want to go back to Ben's encouraging you to apply early, especially someone who is new to the process. Oftentimes, so the application would be due at 12 noon on the day we set. And oftentimes what happens is new applicants will wait until the morning of or an hour or so before, and these applications are queued in, and we have we have a short period of time to review by the 12 noon cutoff. Well, if you've submitted your application, let's say it's 7 a.m., but there were 10 ahead of you, and by noon we get to yours, and you didn't sign a document, or you didn't do a wet signature, which is required on some of the forms, or you're missing something, then your application is incomplete. And it's painful for us to have to be able to say your application was incomplete, and it was incomplete as submitted. However, if we have enough time to review your materials in advance, then we will tell you, hey, you missed something, or you need to sign this form in a different way. We will reach out to you, and we'll tell you what's missing to give you an opportunity to cure whatever defect it is. It's not a hazing process, so we're not trying to weed people out. We welcome you, we welcome all applicants, but the application must be complete. So make sure you get that information in sooner, well before the deadline, so that we can review it. Also, to Marie's point, or to Ben's point, to respond fully to the questions in the questionnaire. Oftentimes we're asking for information so that we can perhaps, for example, contact past employers. Cecilia and I are moving very quickly, and it's a huge headache to have to call you to say, hey, you didn't provide a telephone number, or you didn't provide an email address. And you could miss an opportunity because some information is incomplete. So while we may give you the courtesy of a call, the White House will not. They'll just move on to the next person. And so we want to make sure you take the time, download the application now, look at it, see what's required, and begin to complete it in a more casual way, so that you can review your application and not have a mistake in your materials cause you not to advance. So even if the JNC recommends you to the president may not nominate you, and we would hate for it to be something as simple as you had a typo or a misspelling that we didn't catch, and we weren't able to assist you with curing. And so those I wanted to just speak to those things in our process. Now I'm going to put my hat back in, put my hat back on as moderator. But I also want to do a check-in, a question check. Did anybody have any questions right now in light of the information we've shared so far? Nope, seeing none. So let's move on a little bit. What is the most important advice you can give a prospective applicant right now when they're one who is considering engaging in the process? Let's start with you, Ben.
Okay, well, I see, you guys will forgive me, and I may be wrong, but I see a significant number of first names that appear to be names of women. And the strongest advice I could give is don't self-select yourself out of the process. Men sometimes seem to feel they are automatically qualified. Women, in my experience, oftentimes seek to be perfect. In our family, we ask a rhetorical question, why not you? And so ask yourself that question, why not you? And in terms of the most important advice I could give is explain your why. You know, when you're interviewing with us or anyone else, people don't always ask you the question that they're really thinking about, that's really on their mind. It may be that question is inappropriate, but ultimately we want to know, why do you want to be a judge? Why now? What is it that motivates you? What is it about your life's experiences, not just your work, but your life's experiences, that causes you to want to serve our community in this very special way? And we don't get as much time with you as we would like. And so in a very short period, oftentimes speaking to a stranger So it's not an easy thing to do. Please do explain your why. And that would be my advice. I think you can accept a result as long as you feel like you've had a chance to fully and adequately explain what motivates you and why this is so important to you. I hope that's helpful. Marie?
Mhm. I agree with everything you said, Ben, wholeheartedly. I guess an element that I would add to the why is authenticity, to bring your authentic self to the interview. I know it's, interviews by nature can be a bit daunting, and this is a big deal, interviewing to be a jurist in the District of Columbia. So I don't at all minimize that, but it's always good when an applicant comes before the commission and the personality shines through and the person really speaks from that perspective, brings their whole self to the interview to give the commissioners some insight into who they are, how they operate, and hearing why this serving in this role would be so meaningful for them. So the authenticity, I think, is a very important bit of advice that I believe is important for a successful interview.
I think
go
that's
ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say that's superb advice, Marie, this authenticity point. And I think the one other thing I wanted to say, to go back to a point that was made earlier, either by Marie or Tracy or both of them, and that is this being transparent about who you are, telling us who you are. I'm inspired by the words of that original judicial nomination Commissioner Roberta Flack. And she said, the closer I get to you. And I think I think she was talking about something else, but suffice it to say, the closer we can understand who you are, and I think the better judgment we can make about you. So please do share with us in the meetings that you have, in the papers you submit, who you are, why you want to do that. And as Marie says, all in an authentic voice, your voice. And we have so many people from different walks of life, different practices, different experiences who become judges of our court. There is not one type. And I will say this, that the council that you're all a part of, access to justice, is a big deal for the council. We need people that know and care about access to justice. And so thank you.
So, well, what would you tell a person who has, and I see the question I'll get to in just a minute, but what would you tell a person who didn't make it? In other words, the JNC did not, someone who applied, but the JNC decided that the JNC did not recommend them. Would you encourage them to continue to apply?
Absolutely. And apply if that's the case. Because there's a number of individuals who have been successful who were not recommended on their first try. And so, yes, applicants who continue to have the interest, we urge them to continue to apply.
And so just for those of you who might be interested in knowing someone who we encourage applicants to continue to apply. And oftentimes individuals whose name was recommended to the White House, who might be pending for a vacancy, but they weren't nominated, they may apply again as well. And so we work with the panel that was a panel of individuals whose name was recommended to the White House throughout their process, and they may time it such that they will apply again to be eligible again to be recommended. And so we could, if you decide and you're in that space, we do work with applicants who are in that sort of pending stage to it in a hands-off way. In other words, they're no longer under the GNC. They're no longer a part of the JNC application process, but we continue to maintain a relationship with those individuals who are pending at the White House. So here's a question for you all. Of the applicant pool, how many folks typically get selected for an interview with the JNC? In other words, does the JNC interview everyone who applies for each vacancy?
We interview most people on the list. The only stratification or process that we use perhaps to not include someone on an interview list is if we had recently interviewed that person for another vacancy. I'll pause there.
Yes,
Tracy, you may
yes.
answer that question better than I.
No, so I'll clarify. The JNC applicants can reach out for one-on-one interviews with all of the commissioners. Yes. And so that's so once you apply and after we announce the applicant pool, then we will say reach out to the commissioners and you can request a one-on-one interview with the commissioners, and it's up to them. It's their just whether their time or schedule permits. But I believe the commissioners are willing to have one-on-ones. I think a lot of information is exchanged during that process, and Ben and Ree can weigh in on that, on the importance of the one-on-ones. But then the JNC, they will invite all new applicants for an interview, the full commission interview. So all new applicants automatically get a full commission interview. Applicants who have applied before, the JNC typically does not invite them back for a full interview if they have been interviewed within the past 2 years. That's the general standard. That does not mean that the commission cannot decide to bring someone in who was interviewed sooner or within 2 years. So that's up to the discretion, but generally speaking, all new applicants are invited for the full commission interview, and anyone who has not been interviewed within a 2-year window. But others can also be invited for a group interview.
Tracy, there was also a second part, I think, to that question, which was, is it okay if the application looks the same during reapplications with, of course, any additions and improvements, or is the expectation that the application changes in some way each time? And there, that's really up to the applicant. And what happens is when you go through the process, you learn something about yourself. You learn from the individual interviews and the subsequent group interview. You get some sense of what we think your strengths and weaknesses are.
I see Tracy and Ben are probably coming back, so let me pose this to
Okay.
you, Marie.
I was wondering what was going on. I was by myself.
Exactly. All of a sudden there was some,
Huh, that's interesting. How did they just disappear?
Zoom probably kicked them and they will come
Okay.
right back. So I will monitor, and when they come back, I will let them back in.
Oh,
There's
there we go.
Tracy. There
You
we
guys left
go.
me.
And there's Ben. There we go.
Okay.
Let me add a follow-up
breathe.
question, right? To the applications, with respect to if there's additional information through the process. So you apply, you supply information. What if there needs to be updates? Is that allowed, and what is the process for that?
So I wanted to weigh in. There is a short form so we encourage individuals to use the current form, the current version, and then you can use Form 21A, which is just a short form. It permits you to update any particular area and sign new waivers, so you don't have to redo the form, as long as that form is current. In other words, you submitted it within a year. However, some applicants, as Marie suggests, and Ben, I'm sure would agree, they during the process, they notice something that they want to do differently. They want to add something. Well, they may reach out to me and say, hey, I want to submit a whole new questionnaire for this new application. Can I do that? And we'll say, yeah, go ahead and submit it. However, during the application process, so right now we are currently closing out 2 vacancies. We take the form that's submitted. That's the form that was submitted, and we don't do a whole lot of updates at this particular point. But an applicant can certainly make a few tweaks to their form at some point during another process, and we encourage it. Did I answer your question, Christina?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So another question I wanted to make sure we respond to, or at least address. Are there any particular potential things an applicant should look out for when joining groups or voluntary bar associations? Are there some things they need to consider when joining particular organizations? So, for example, if the mission of is it important to make sure the mission of that particular organization aligns with their personal values?
Certainly. Yes, and I mean, there is a question on the application that asks if applicants are members of any organizations that are discriminatory in any way. That may not be the exact word, but that's the import of the question. So organizations that again are in keeping with who the applicant is and their areas of interest, but really and there's so many ways to do this, but organizations that are bring one in touch with various parts of the city, allows to learn from new people, to contribute to the life and health of Washington, D.C., I guess is the way that's a big net how I would describe the big net I'm trying to convey. What do you think, Ben?
I love what you said. Listen, just speaking personally, I'm interested in people who care about the people who live and work in the District of Columbia. These are the people that come before our courts. And one way that you can show that, of course, is in the community groups that you choose to give your time to. And so Marie made a great point. It's not just legal work. It's not just bar associations, though I would say of this particular bar, the idea that access to justice is a big deal to the council. It's a big deal to our commission too. So I think it speaks volumes. You likely already know that many of our affinity bars and voluntary bar associations will send us letters of recommendation of people that they think would be good judges. That's not a reason to join a voluntary bar association, but that does happen. But look for service. Is there a way that I can serve the Washington, D.C. community through my association with this given organization? Will it put me in direct contact with people? And please understand, I know you guys are public interest lawyers. By definition, your work every day has to deal with helping people who live and work in our community. But we also want to have some sense of what you do when you're not on the job. Everybody's busy. How do you choose to spend your spare time, and how do you lend your talent to Washington, D.C.? So I hope that's useful and helpful as you're thinking about the groups with which you choose to associate, and how do you spend your time, particularly to the extent you have time beyond family and other responsibilities, time in your life. Thank you.
And my last question, unless we have some in the chat, I meant to circle back to the one-on-one interviews. Can you all share how important, why they're helpful, or if they are helpful, and if so, why they're helpful to the process?
Well, for me, certainly as we've been able to, well, Zoom, the pandemic taught us many things, but we know that Zoom is a powerful tool, and it's now baked into how we do business, how we communicate with family and friends, really so many aspects of life, and it's a blessing. However, I'm old school from the standpoint, nothing for me beats having that need time with someone where you're sitting in the same space and meeting together whenever that's possible. So I do appreciate those opportunities to meet with applicants on a one-on-one basis, and to ask questions about their background, go over the application, but also to talk a little bit about what's not on the paper, because I think for most, I shouldn't generalize, but for me, there's a lot. I have probably 100 different iterations of a resume and bios and so on and so forth. But some of the most important things you'll learn about me are stories of the 8-year-old Marie and the 18-year-old Marie, and how that shaped me for this septuagenarian Marie. So I'll admit, so I'm giving you fair warning, I like to delve into what's not on the paper and to find out about what was going on in elementary school that may have led you to the moment that we're discussing.
Well, I love Marie's response, and I'm not certain I know what a septuagenarian is, but
yes, you do. You may not be one, but you know what it is.
No, I am one, and I do know what it is. I think we're the same age, actually. And in case you missed it, I think the world of Marie John. She's an amazing leader, amazing businesswoman in our community, and there's little that she hasn't touched, and if she touches it, it almost always gets better. What I would say to you, these one-on-ones are extremely important for me. I can think of an instance of an applicant that I learned came to this country from another country, inspired up by a mother who was a lawyer. I recall another applicant who was raised by a single mother, and it was her example that inspired this particular applicant. Ultimately, I want to know what makes you tick. And so, I want to know about a challenge that you've encountered in life, and how did you get through that challenge? And we had another applicant who at one point in his life was homeless, and really had to fend for themselves as early as age 15 or 16. Listen, not everybody encounters enormous challenges like some of our applicants have, but everybody has a story, and everybody, if they are willing to share it with us, can tell us where their service gene is derived from. And so what happens is, when we learn about that in the course of a one-on-one interview, I can't tell you how many times, already knowing what the answer is, like good trial attorneys, we will then ask the applicant in the presence of the others who may not have heard that story in the one-on-one interview to recount it. And it is in that explanation before the full board, sharing what was shared with just one of us, we get to see this person in stark relief. And what you could never, to take Marie's point, what you could never convey in a resume, no matter how many versions you have, you're able to convey in the course of that, your answer to that question. So we hope that you will be brave enough to let us know who you really are, because it takes courage to let down your guard and say not simply what you want, but why you want it, and why you think you can make this remarkable contribution to our community. I hope you all know we need the rule of law. We need judges who care about not just the law, but the people who live with the law and are prepared to demystify this process for those who come before her or before him. And so that you're here today means a great deal to us. So thank you for that.
So Marie and Ben, how much weight do endorsements or recommendations from affinity bars, volunteer organizations, et cetera, carry with the commission?
They are certainly carefully considered by the commissioners and can be helpful. One thing I would say, though, that is not helpful, in fact, I believe it's not viewed well at all, certainly by me, is I know there one relatively recent example of appeared to be a cut and paste operation where a number of letters were sent on an applicant's behalf, but it was the same letter from a variety of various senders, authors, quote unquote. So letters are good, but please just make sure that they are, back to that word again, authentic, people who know you, who can write something from their own experience with you, and not just something that's perfunctory, because the difference does show up. And certainly campaigns of letters, rote letters, are not helpful.
Just so you all know, we keep letters in your file for 2 years, and so someone who wrote one within a 2-year period would not need to rewrite a letter. We have it. To Marie's point, there was someone who sent in a letter, and it was 3 or 4 years old. And it was just a, hey, here's the letter. I wrote this in whenever the year was, and just use it. And from someone who's sitting, it wasn't necessarily a good look because the person, surely the applicant must have changed in 3 years. Something must have or update. But we received it, and we did ask. We did let them know we had that letter. And for you all, the applicants, we won't tell you who sent us a letter. So we encourage you to, if someone writes a letter on your behalf, to make sure you have a copy. Those letters are confidential. We don't share them with the White House. And we will not share them with you. So make sure if you want a copy of your letter from someone, to request it from them, and know that we keep those letters as part of your file for 2 years. Ben?
Yes, there's one thing I wanted to add. Not every letter we get is one that you've solicited or one you would like. Once in a while, we get a letter because, as Tracy described the process, once we have the names of people who have applied, we ask the public to comment. And sometimes you will get negative letters that are submitted. Sometimes they are unsigned, which for me doesn't really go very far. But again, you're not wholly unaware of who your friends and perhaps your rare enemies may be. But again, be sure that you have a chance to put things in perspective. And if we receive something that does give us pause, we'll ask you about it. And because again, I think it takes I believe in the old Theodore Roosevelt story about the person that's in the ring, that's in the middle of the combat. And so that you've been willing to throw your hat in the ring matters. And but understand that everything that's written isn't always positive. And so how you treat people matters. And I know the law, having done it for a long time, it can be at times very frustrating, and no one can frustrate you more than an opposing counsel, and or perhaps even a very difficult client. But do find a way. Professionalism matters. And obviously an even-tempered judge who can keep her cool, keep his cool, irrespective of the circumstances, makes all the difference. And all you have to do is read a paper today or turn on your television, and you understand why judicial temperament matters. So thank you.
So Ben and Marie, if here's a question, if you practice in another jurisdiction for a period of time, are letters from people you practice with in those other jurisdictions still helpful, or are they somewhat irrelevant?
I find that helpful.
Absolutely. I think they're helpful. I think what you want to do, though, is those letters, if they can tell us about your character, or tell us a story about you that tells us who you are, or explains how your experience in this court in Maryland or in Michigan or in Alabama or wherever it is you were before, how it's like, similar to instructive in your development as a possible judge of one of our courts. So there's a lot that we do in courts. Those of you that are appearing in courts or practicing in other cities and other states, that's not bad experience. In fact, it can be excellent experience. But paint the picture for us. Help us understand why that experience is relevant. And think about, some of you may have clerked for a judge, and she may be in a different state. You may have worked with an organization that does important work that's relevant here in the District of Columbia, but in another state. Explain that to us so that we understand. And we are open-minded. We want talent. And I promise you, there's not just one type of person that we think will make a good judge. And not just one type of background, not just one type of educational background. We're open to talent wherever it may present itself.
Thank you both. Nicole, Joseph, did you have another question?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. And if I'm monopolizing the questions and other people have them, I'm also happy to take a back seat. I just figured I'd make use of the time. I have a question about, so I know the magistrate judge process is different than the one that was described today. Is there any advantage to applying there first or sitting as a magistrate judge first? Is that experience that is worthwhile enough that that should be the first process many of us look to? Are there any pros and cons that anyone can think of about going through both processes at the same time? Those are kind of amorphous questions, but yeah.
Not so amorphous. Listen, I think that we have judges who were magistrate judges who become judges of our Superior Court. And we think that's excellent experience. And period. I don't have any other way to put it. Now, if you apply for magistrate judge and Superior Court judge or Superior Court judge and judge of the Court of Appeals at the same time, or maybe right after each other, I bet you can guess, Ms. Joseph, what our question is going to be. You know, which do you really want?
Sure.
And the truthful answer is sometimes this was the opening that was available, and that's the one, and that's why I pursued it. But the second one is the one that I feel most qualified for, you know. Again, it has to be, as Marie would say, an authentic answer in who you really are. But we need magistrate judges. We respect their experience. We've had excellent applicants who were magistrate judges. And excuse me. And so I would only encourage you if this is something that is of interest to you or to others. And by the way, your questions are important because I suspect you have the question, maybe your question, but it's likely one that others share. So thank you for raising it. Marie, did you want to add?
No, I agree with Ben's comments, Nicole, and I think there are a number of examples of people who have individuals who are currently Superior Court justices who have served in other jurist positions. So just look at all of them, you know, think of it through the lens of, you know, where you are in your career and what makes sense. And then, as Ben said earlier, go for it.
Awesome. Thank you. And to that point, I guess one last question. You know, I'm still in my first 10 years of practice, though being on the bench appeals to me even now. What advice do you have for younger practitioners or less experienced practitioners in terms of standing out on an application, given that there's maybe less legal experience or trial experience on that application?
Ben, I'll defer to you on that, please.
So listen, there's no perfect time to become a judge. I do think one needs a reasonable length of experience practicing law. You're, let's see, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt who said a woman is like a tea bag. You never know how strong she is until you put her in a cup of hot water. And so I think it's important that you get in some hot water, whichever job that you have, where you have responsibility, where you have to make decisions, and where you have to act. I think you can expedite the process of becoming a good lawyer and a judge, the greater the experience you have. So if that is of importance to you, I think you can speed the process some. But I think there's something to be said for taking that time, having that 8, 10, 12 years of experience, and then embarking on that process. And because what happens is not only you learning skills, Miss Joseph, you're learning about yourself. You know, you're learning about your own temperament. So one of the questions I will ask people sometimes is, why ref the game if you can still play? And really what I'm asking is this really what you want to do at this juncture in your life? So many of you are phenomenal advocates and you like doing that. You find that job fulfilling. And so on the other hand, this may be precisely what you want. It's a different way to serve. And you're an advocate for the rule of law and not so much an advocate for an individual plaintiff or defendant. So I hope this is helpful, but get that experience, and wherever you're working, if you're not getting the experience that you want and you've asked for it and you're not getting it, look for another place. You want this, excuse me, you want this experience. It's absolutely critical. And, but I don't think you have to be a certain age. I just don't. Period.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for the advice today.
Thanks for being here, Nicole.
So I don't see any other questions. And so I want to thank you thank you all for joining us today, for spending your lunch hour with us. And we appreciate your questions. We appreciate your interest in the process, and we hope to see some of your names come across our desk in a upcoming vacancy. So just as by way of announcing, at some point down the road, we know that Chief Judge Josie Herring is retiring, and so that is, we anticipate to be our next vacancy. So look out for it. So now might be the time to go to the website and print out that questionnaire and begin to work on it, so that when that vacancy is announced, you're ready to go. So Ben and Marie, did you all have any closing remarks?
Just thank you. Add my thanks to yours, Tracy, and Christina. Thank you for the time, and we're very grateful for everyone's participation. And happy to, if any questions come up following this time, please be in touch. As Ben said earlier, Tracy Nutall knows all. Was that? I like that.
If I could just say thank you, our executive director and our chair both said it beautifully. So I have little to add or detract except to say thank you very much. That the council is an important organization, and that you all have chosen to cast your lot with the council means everything. That you've chosen to practice law in the public interest means everything. And that experience is needed on our courts, the Superior Court of the District of Columbia, the Court of Appeals of the District of Columbia. And so be certain you're prepared, but there is never, ever a perfect time to do anything. And it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, you don't have to see the whole staircase to take the first step. So he knew something about taking steps. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all three of you, both for sharing your time and this great information, but honestly, more importantly, for how thoughtful the commission is in their recommendations. It is, as you said, so incredibly important to have judges who are able to compassionately, fairly, equitably apply the rule of law. And it's so your step is so very important. We're so grateful to all of the work that you do. It's very important. Folks, I will be following up with you with both the recording of this and some follow-up information. When they say reach out to them if you have questions, they 100% mean it. We do not want to hide the ball. We want to make sure that the applications are as strong as they possibly can be. We want folks who are dedicated to the district and have compassion for the folks that they see, that we see in our courts every day. And so we want to make sure that great candidates are stepping forward. If you have any further questions, follow up with them. Or if I can be of any assistance, please let me know. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.